the stream here. There I am. I disappeared myself. We've got Luis Jimenez from the Unidentified Celebrity Review. He's going to be joining us here. Let's see. I've got an echo going on. Man, all kinds of technical stuff going on here. I'm just going to throw everybody else in the stream here. I've also got Michael Mataluni from the Singularity Lab. We're jumping in here hot, and we're going to have a fun time tonight, you guys. Man, I'm starting off rough here.
Hey, man, live streams.
It is
live streams. Oh man, we've had so many.
I know. And you guys, go ahead.
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, it's either like Avi Loeb showing up 10 minutes late and us like doing a dance and like having a juggle while waiting for folks, or me getting the time wrong. And yeah, it's it shit happens, man. It's live.
And you guys have shows like basically every night of the week almost, except for on the weekends. And then here you are on the weekend joining me on my show, being awesome bros and hanging out. And you guys have so much stuff going on. So Luis, over on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, you guys have got so much going on. Why don't you take everybody just a second and tell everybody what you're doing over there on the channel and what everybody can expect if they go check you out.
Well, I mean, we're talking about UAPs, UFOs. We're trying to bring scientific, grounded conversations. We're trying to take the topic seriously. We just don't take ourselves too seriously. But we also have a very keen interest in the political aspect of the conversation. So, every once in a while, we'll do this thing called the Big Phone Home. And it's just a huge organized effort to motivate as many citizens to call Congress and demand more data, more transparency, more information, more scientific discussion, more grants, and congressional hearings on the UAP discussion. And so, yeah, I mean, that's basically what we do. We have a lot of laughs, and but we talk to really smart, fun, interesting people.
Yeah, you guys have some like A-list guests over there on the show. You guys have had Lou Elizondo. You guys have had, I can't even name them all. You've had tons of awesome people over there. And that's how I found you guys as well. And a lot of other friends in this UFO, UAP, paranormal community was based off of the Big Phone Home. And you guys have another one coming up here soon. When is that going to happen? Do you know? So
it's going to be September 4th, 5th, and 6th, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Labor Day weekend. We're going to be doing a live stream. We haven't picked the times yet. We're going to be nailing down a lot of these details right after this show.
Right on.
But like last time we did it, Mike, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah, 10 Pacific to 6. I think it was like, for me, it was like 1 to 9 or something like that. It was wild though, man. It wasn't that bad. Like the idea of going into an 8-hour live stream sounds horrifying and daunting. But man, we had so many amazing people that it was just a blast.
By the time we got to the end of it, I'm like, it didn't seem as long as it thought it was gonna seem.
Yeah, I had my headphones on. I paid attention off and on throughout that whole thing, almost that entire day, and that really sucked me in. I was like, I've got to be a part of this. I've been dying forever. And Michael, you've been a part of the community for a while too, coming at this from a different angle over on the Singularity Lab. So tell everybody really quick, for those people that are listening or watching this on the podcast or whatever, so they can find you and figure out what you're up to.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So I have been podcasting for quite a while. I've been podcasting since about 2014. My first podcast was called Kick-Ass Dad, Passionate Parenting in a Volatile World. And it was a fun show for parents, dealing with the insanity of having children. And then I got really focused on my business and doing digital marketing. And then it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I started podcasting again. Launched a podcast called Cocktails and Calamity, where we just had fun talking about futurism and politics and all kinds of wild shit. And then I hit the debrief for a little bit, and I was working with them, and that really reignited my interest in UAP and UFOs, as well as futurism, breaking technology. And then Lou and I crossed paths. We did an interview, just fell in love, and the rest is history.
It is. And now here we are. Fast forward through space time and bingo. Now we're all over here on the Carl Vibe Show. Why don't we just jump in the deep end and we'll just jump right down. so most people get into this kind of thing because they've had some sort of an experience themselves. And I know that everybody's already told their stories to everybody till they're blue in the face. And we don't have to do that here if you want to just reference it. But what got you into this topic? Let's go ahead and start with you, Lou. What got you involved in this and started with a passion from the get-go? Because I think it has a foundation for your angle on it and why you look at it the way that you do. It does definitely for me.
Well, it's weird. I didn't have an experience first. I cannot explain why, but I feel like I've heard this story a lot from people that are into the topic. And that is when I was in elementary school, they would give us like a half-hour library day or something like that. Library day where you go to the library, you can pick out whatever you want and you can look at it for an hour or check it out if you like it. And I always found myself by the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, and UFOs. There was always a pair of, it was only like maybe 6 books at most. But it was in every single library that every single school that I've ever attended had paranormal books.
And they were always right by the Guinness Book of World Records books, and you always pulled those out too, right? I was the same kid.
Yes,
100%. So I remember the earliest memory of that I have is second grade. Like second grade,
for sure.
Third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, I was really into it. I think in middle school is when I started reading the bigger things. Like the book that sticks out in my mind is the book about the Gulf breeze sightings in Florida, because that's where I'm from. And yeah, man, that book terrified the hell out of me. Like there was some really crazy pictures in that book. And that's what got me started. I would do like, the foldable cardboard science projects.
Yeah.
I would do UFO related, alien related science projects, and the teachers would always give me.
You get like a C minus, right?
C minus, C plus.
Dude, they're like the same kid.
Like, I like the passion, kiddo, but it's just not scientific. And I'm just like, how is this not scientific? How is this not scientific?
And now you're still like, I'm going to show you your grade school teachers. Maybe you should go to therapy. You've got a whole channel and you're doing a phone home now. Maybe it all goes back to those grade school days where you felt picked on by the teachers.
I feel like I'm still doing the three panel science project, but it's just morphed into a YouTube channel. But it's still a C minus. Like we're still C minus entertainment, I guess.
That's awesome. But you've had an encounter though, right, Lou?
Yeah, man.
You've seen some things. Maybe we'll go ahead and I want to hear if you want to tell it. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I was 13 years old. And it was like my first like birthday party I got to go to as like a fresh teenager without my parents, and my parents let me go to a party without them. It was the first time. And I went to a birthday party with my best friend at the time, this guy, Tony, and this girl lived on, for better words, a farm. It was, they were like, where I'm from in Florida, it was a blend of houses that sit on like 4, 5, sometimes 6 acres, and then just cookie cutter suburban neighborhoods. So I lived in like those suburban, very basic neighborhoods. And then this girl lived on one of these acre plots, and she had a cow farm next to her. And so anyway, so around 9:30 at night, just a little after the sun went down, we're in the party, and me and my friend look at this girl, and she's standing in, not in the middle of the field, but she's a good 300, 400, 500 feet away from the party, and she's just standing in the grass, just looking up like this, and there's nobody around her. We're like, okay, that's weird. We walked over. We're like, hey, what are you looking at? And we started also looking up, and she's like, I'm looking at that light right there. And before she even said it, we saw it. We're like, damn, that's weird. It was just like this green orb is the best way I can describe it. It didn't look anything too crazy when I first got my eyes on it. We were thinking, oh, well, maybe it's what's going on, Michael?
Sorry
He's
about that.
good. You're good, man.
I was trying to share the story.
We're
Story.
totally chill here.
What
The
the hell is
aliens
going
are
on?
trying to interrupt you. They
Yeah.
don't want your story to get out. Lou.
No, so I we're looking at it, and then this is where my memory gets a little fuzzy. The next thing I remember is this. Jesus, Michael, who's calling you? What's going on?
It's
cool
Carl's.
story.
It's
Carl's
me. I'm
story.
actually doing it over here on the side. No, I'm just kidding. No,
I'm trying to share it.
Oh yeah, I shared that one. Okay, cool. Sorry. So the memory gets a little fuzzy, and then the next thing I remember is that this craft is hovering 30, 40 feet off the ground in the middle of the cow field.
Wait, your memory gets a little fuzzy because there's.
It does. Yeah.
Was there any lost time or anything there?
No, I don't think there was lost time. Because, and I'll tell you, I was aware of these things because I'd already read a whole bunch of UFO books at this point. I was 13 years old. Like I was very familiar with the UFO topic at 13. And so even at 13 years old, I was going through the Rolodex because this is what I had read that you need to do. Like I was like, okay, it's not a plane. Do you hear it? No. What I logged the direction it was moving. If I had the notepad or that I had written in, or the if I just recorded it or something, it would have been infinitely better. I'm sure the details, but I remember very vividly going through all of the things it's not. And the thing that struck me about it is there was no noise to it. So the closest thing I could compare it to at first was a blimp. But I was looking at it. I'm like, maybe it's a blimp. But I was waiting. You know how you wait for a blimp to turn, and then it gives you that Goodyear or that very familiar thing that says, "Oh, it's a blimp." It never did that. And then after that, the only thing I really remember, because I don't remember it traveling from high in the sky to above the field. I think this is just a memory thing, where it's a 28-year-old memory. And for whatever reason, I just don't remember how I got from there to here. But the next thing I remember was it was in the middle of this field, and it was shaped like a lemon, but with the top of it being bigger than the bottom. And it had portholes like very similar to the Gulf Breeze craft. If you want to pull up a picture of the Gulf Breeze craft, they give you a real damn good idea of what I saw. It was so close to that. I had a blinking light on the top of it. It was bright white in the middle, and it had a green aura, which was weird. That's just the color I remember. And as soon as I saw it there, I said to myself, holy shit, I got to get a better look. I mean, at this point, the party went from a party to, whoa, what's going on over there? And it was kids and adults all looking at this thing going, what the hell is that? Like you could hear it in the adults' voices, which I think the party was over after this happened. Like nobody wanted, like the party was done. Pretty much everybody was talking about this, but just wanted to go home immediately after it. But yeah, is
this what it looked like?
It looked very similar to that. Yeah. Very similar to that. And I'm not mixing memories here. That's because when you dive deep into this case, there's a very good chance that the person who made these photos was faking them. It's like most people lean, but when you really, really dig into it, man, the story gets very, very interesting because that photo right there that you just showed is it's almost impossible to fake because of the photo techniques that you would have to do. It was taken like there's raw images of it. It's not just like a copy of a photo.
Right.
So once I saw it, I said to myself, I have to get a better look at this thing. I immediately wanted to get closer to it. That was the first instinct. And the cow field was lined by a whole bunch of trees, about 75, 100 feet tall. And I started running toward the fence line where those trees are, because right behind that is the cow field where this thing is sitting. And I'm not taking my eye off it at all. But then I start losing it through the big trees, and it's like light, and then boom, nothing. I didn't see it disappear. I didn't see it leave. It was just gone. I lost it behind a tree, and then when I came out from the other side of the tree, there was no light.
So would you, I mean, I have a ton of questions. I want to hear what Michael's story is as well here. And then we'll jump into the main core of the topic, which is, do you feel like what you experienced and what is happening is a nuts and bolts physical type craft that came from somewhere else in the galaxy, like an actual vessel or ship? Or is it interdimensional or from another plane of existence, or maybe something both?
I don't know where it's from. But I can tell you it was nuts and crafts, or nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
Because
nuts and crafts, that sounds like a good breakfast cereal.
Yeah. You should get on that. I wonder what the mascot would be.
New t-shirt for your show. Nuts and crafts.
Or like a brewery.
A brewery. There you go.
The mascot would be an angry art teacher.
It's like a good name for a bar.
But yeah, I don't. It felt very mechanical to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I could see portholes. The portholes are the things that really sort of stick out in my memory. And then I could see there was structure lines that separated the top half of the craft from the bottom part of it. So there was a structure to it. It wasn't like a ball of plasma. It was just, but imagine the metal was glowing. like that's how it looked, but it was bright white metal, and then it just gave off this aura that didn't expand. In other words, it didn't light up anything other than what was kind of underneath it. It's like it almost, the light stopped at where it wanted to, I don't know, I can't explain it. It's very, very strange. But the blinking light at the top of it is also something that sticks out to me. It was like a strobe light at the top of the craft, which after now an adult, I think of it and I'm like, man, maybe it was man-made. Maybe it was a military craft. First of all, the flight path is right underneath the Fort Lauderdale International Airport. But it definitely wasn't like a Boeing or a helicopter. Those two things are out for sure. But we do have the Homestead Air Force Base, which is not too far, probably 60, 70 miles from that point. There's a whole bunch of military bases in Puerto Rico. So, but military aircraft I was used to seeing. I'm very familiar with it because as a kid, I'd go see the Blue Angels and I'd go see the Miami Air Show. Like that was a thing every year. So it didn't have the loud rumblings. It didn't make any sound at all. I don't remember any sound from it at all. So that's why I'm like, man, I just don't know. I have no clue where it came from. I don't even have an inkling as to, is it man-made? Is it extraterrestrial? Is it interdimensional? Is it, ultra terrestrial?
You can't even compartmentalize it into a logical box that we can define it.
The weirdest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, like I ran into, and my mom barely remembers this. Michael was here for that conversation. We had my mom on the show for Mother's Day, and she kind of remembers me busting into the house, around 10 o'clock at night, just screaming at the top of my lungs, wanting to tell them what I saw. And they're just like, go to bed. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And the first thing I did, one of the first things I remember doing was there was a TV show on Fox, and I think it was called Sightings. And at the end of Sightings, there was a phone number you could call and report your sighting. And so that's what I did. I called it. Dude, if I've never looked this up, but I'm wondering if we can find this because it might exist somewhere. But I left a message on that machine, giving them the direction, the atmospheric conditions, the temperatures. I remembered everything, and I recorded it on that hotline the next day with my friend right there, like him and I. Because his mom picked us up, she took me home first, and we were freaking out in the car. And of course, we're like, all right, call me tomorrow. Okay, I'll call you tomorrow. As soon as I woke up, he called me. I called him. He came over to my house. He lived right down the street. And we sat there for an hour, and we just talked about it over and over. And we went over it, over and over it. And then we called. I was so nervous when I called. And then we told them, all of the details of it, and nobody ever called us back.
Nobody ever.
which I found kind of. I think the show got canceled pretty shortly after. That might have been the last season that they had produced, literally when I made the call during the season. And if that's the case, then yeah, of course they never called me back because they never made any more shows.
How amazing would that be to be able to like pull that recording back up and listen to it all these years later and
I would
live stream it?
I would kill for that recording, man. I would kill for that recording because it's two kids. It's
Right.
two 13-year-old kids, you know,
Yeah.
like I'm sure if whoever there was a producer on that show, I bet they were begging for one more episode if they heard that, or another season. I guarantee we would have made the season if they'd made another season. But yeah, man, it was wild.
That's amazing, Lou. Yeah. So as a foundation to the rest of the conversation as to whether this is from another dimension or these are from the galaxy somewhere on another planet, let's go over to Michael and hear. Do you have any kind of experiences or just an accumulation, or is your experiences more spiritual or paranormal? Tell us what you've experienced.
So my interest in this topic is similar to Lou. So when I was a kid, it was like I was all about pyramids and Loch Ness Monster and UFOs and, pretty much anything I could get my hands on that was in the realm of mystery.
Remember that show In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Dude, I love that shit.
Dude, it's great. Yeah, I was super into all of it. So I was 11 years old and my family and I were on we rented a house somewhere around Destin, Florida. And it was just a dark evening, but it was pretty clear. And we were out on the balcony and we were looking over the ocean and we just saw probably like 5 or 6 lights. And again, 11 years old, so 11-year-old memory. But I actually recently called my dad and asked him what he remembers about it. And he remembered actually in more vivid detail than I did. My mother saw it, my father saw it, aunts, uncles, my little sister. And so basically what we saw was just all these different lights out above the ocean, and they were darting off in pretty extreme angles. So they would shoot, and then they would turn at a 90-degree angle and come back around, and they were moving incredibly quickly, and we were all just flabbergasted. And there is an Air Force base pretty close to that area, so we all assumed it was maybe some sort of military test project or something. But having never seen anything like this, I mean, I'm 42 years old right now. This would be 30 plus years ago. So, did the government have incredible drone technology then? Maybe. But man, these things were unbelievable. And the whole family was just kind of shaken up about it. We didn't know what we had just witnessed. And it was a pretty powerful event. And that was one thing that got me really like locked into UFOs. But then, I hit high school and totally got out of that interest level, really focused on the things high schoolers do. And it wasn't until later in life that I, kind of stumbled back into this topic. And I'm extremely passionate about philosophy, consciousness, technology, physics. All these things are what right up in my wheelhouse. These are the things I like to talk about. Like if I can't stand chit chat. I can't stand small talk. I love to dig deep into cool topics. And that's why that's why I created the Singularity Lab. That's why we joined up with Lou on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, because, we get to talk to amazing people. And, neither Lou or I consider ourselves experts in these topics, but we get to, create a platform to bring in experts and, interesting people and people with new ideas. And, we don't really get stuck in this sort of idea that you have to have, the only guest you could talk about physics with is somebody who's, it's like, come on, like we can have conversations and use our imaginations outside of the halls of academia. And that's what I really like to do. So, when it comes to where these things come from, what the phenomena is, to me, the most profound thing that got me back into this topic of UAP specifically was Fravor and Dietrich's incident, and that continues to me to be the kind of the gold standard when it comes to this is something beyond what our military is doing and what we have. However, I take no hypothesis off the table, right? Like for me, you can have a priority list, or as Mick West calls it, an atomic list. But to me, it's like you can't take anything off the table, especially, and this is the whole thing with the Fermi paradox, right? The idea that, there's 10 stars in our galaxy to every single grain of sand on the Earth. Like, I don't even know what to do with that number. I don't even know how to process that. But I do know that the idea that we're alone in the galaxy is obscene and absurd and incredibly egocentric. That being said, has any being figured out a way to get off the planet past the great filter and travel these extraordinary distances in a biological meat body? I don't know, but the idea of von Neumann probes and the possibility of AI and other intelligent civilizations sending scouts out into the universe to me, that's my number one hypothesis when it comes to the most extraordinary of these UFO events.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk about right now and jump into head first is like, where do we go with all of this and what angle do we take? I think you have to look at it from all the perspectives. Is it physical? Is it an actual craft from another planet? Or are they coming from another dimension of reality or an alternate part of the multiverse or something like that, where reality gets thin and they come through? And a lot of that flies right over a lot of people's heads when you start talking about things like Lou Elizondo and Bob Bigelow saying that these entities, when they're down on the ground or when they encounter us as humans, it seems like those encounters come off as paranormal, or they involve things that's when you're sleeping at night, or different types of, I'm sorry, my throat's acting really funny tonight. No, you're good. Paranormal phenomenon that occurs, and it almost comes off like a spiritual event. So how would you guys quantify that where the two blend together? Go ahead, Luis. Sorry, my throat's like acting really funny.
I mean, I don't know how you'd quantify it. I think it's a combination of all of those things. Yeah. It doesn't have to be just one. Like, I think it's military aircraft. Yeah. I think it could be alien visitors. I think it could be interdimensional. I think it could be versions of ourselves visiting in the past and guiding things to make sure that the future is guaranteed.
So how do you explain that when they talk about it being other dimensional? Like, if you were going to try and explain that to somebody, what is another dimension of reality where these things could be?
I try to explain it in, I always ask them, well, how many dimensions are there? Tell me them. Height, width, depth, right? That's usually where they get to. And then they don't ever include time. Time is a dimension. Right. And then once I think they understand that, now imagine something operating in a fifth dimension that we've never seen, or a sixth, or a seventh,
or imagined, or yeah.
So that's how I like to think of it. That's sort of how I sort of wrap my brain about, like, think of it as, especially now, a nice analogy I like to use is the same one Elizondo talks about, these monsters just below the sea surface that we used to think were from hell, and then once we actually got some divers in the water and instruments in the water, we figured out, oh, they're whales, like, right, they're sharks, right, there are big squid, there are all these marine life and marine animals that if you had never had any context for these things, you would be flabbergasted at seeing one of them. And so, but now we know what they are. And I think that's sort of the same thing. A lot of folks also, like, I think Greenstreet thinks they're right in front of your face, man. Like, if you could put on a pair of IR goggles and see an infrared, imagine putting on a different set of goggles where you can see all of it.
Which technically you have to do even going into the ocean, right? We had no ability to even look down deep into the ocean without developing alternative lenses
Right.
and helmets in order to be able to go in and change our perception and be able to take the air down and go look almost
and
like
we had to
going into
bring-
space.
We had to bring our own atmosphere with us.
just like going into outer space almost. Yeah. It's not that much different. It's very, what do you think?
Have you guys ever read the, it was like I think it's like an 18th century novella. It's called Flatland. We studied it in philosophy when I was in college. And the idea is that there's these beings that live on this 2-dimensional surface, and they're being visited by 3-dimensional beings, but they can only see in 2 dimensions. So their ability to recognize what they're seeing only fits into their reality, yet they exist in a far more a way that they just can't perceive, but they're only seeing bits and pieces of this. And we had Bradley Voorhees on the show the other day, and he got a lot of folks riled up. But one of his theories is that we're living on the surface of a black hole, and we're actually living in a 2-dimensional reality, but we're perceiving it as 3 dimensions. And
because it's curved.
And
it's a curved hologram.
Right. And so this idea that we can only perceive it, and you go back to the visible light spectrum and what we can perceive of the visible light spectrum, and how much of reality we just simply can't perceive. I think this is where we have to be humble and say, we really don't know what's possible and out there, but we should be open to the possibilities. And again, this is why, I love speaking to people in academia, but I love to speak to people who are using their imagination and
on the fringe.
I think this idea, people get mad when you speculate in the paranormal, but I think speculating in the paranormal actually does a service to science, and it allows people to create new hypotheses and go test those hypotheses. And that's how you learn. So I'm totally open to the fringe. I'm open to all these things. I don't speculate on these things as fact, but I think the thought experiments are incredibly helpful in pushing science forward and pushing our understanding of the universe forward. So that's why I love to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. I like what you were saying about it. If we had a lens that we could put on, maybe, and that's what we're trying to do with like FLIR technology and these different types of devices now, something that we can adapt our ability to perceive reality in order to see these other dimensions. And that in a way kind of reveals in and of itself, like our own human limitations. Like we come into the world with a particular hardware set of lenses. We have our eyes are literally lenses, your ears, you've got basically a membrane that picks up frequency, pulse vibrations passing through you. And you've got your sensory mechanisms in your body and your skin and all of that. But really, you've got the
sense of, I was just going to say real quick, Carl, the sense of smell too.
Yeah.
Our olfactory senses, they're still not explained through science, right? And they're actually postulating this is a quantum interaction with molecules. And it's like, this is the insanity of this, these quantum brains that we're walking around here on this planet with, and how limited yet extraordinary they are.
Definitely. It makes me think, like if reality is something more like a quantum field or a particle field, let's imagine it being like an energetic gas cloud that's non-differentiated, that has consciousness within it, or a field of different consciousnesses, like a cloud of consciousness. But then you place a lens within that, and that focal point suddenly is able to see holographically that cloud in a perceptual way that isn't actually real, but gives you like a sense of reality that feels 3-dimensional and actual, to the point where you could actually move around it and live a whole life. So when you think about that, our lenses are preset to only see reality evolutionary a certain way. So do you think that if these things are extraterrestrials, that it's a problem that they're controlling those lenses and hiding from us using their advanced technology and able to stay hidden? Are we just not capable of perceiving them? Or do they actually exist in another blind spot dimension? What do you guys think about that?
All of the above.
Yeah, I mean, again, another thing of maybe all three. I mean, I love, again, Lou Elizondo's analogy of the cigarette.
Yeah.
Like past, present, time, future. But as the present is burning in that cherry, you've got
parts of the past and parts of the future popping off all at the same time. And it gets the closer you get to that cherry, the stranger it gets. And if these craft or being operate freely within this cigarette, that might explain some of it, sort of like how they can do whatever they want. Time is of no meaning to them. They it doesn't matter. But I always love going back to the person who is smoking the cigarette. Like, does something have control over the phenomena? Like, is there a even bigger, crazier power that is smoking this cigarette, thinking it's just a cigarette? Like it's a inanimate object. It's just there for his 10 minutes of pleasure or her 10 minutes of pleasure. And when this entity is done, it's just like, boop, I'm done, but that 10 minutes for that burn feels like trillions of years for us.
Right.
And I'm wondering, my biggest question is does that phenomenon, as it's operating within our reality and within our rules of this cigarette, is it aware that it's being smoked, by something even bigger? And that's where my brain just starts going, but when I asked Lou, he's like, well, that's what, theologians have been thinking about forever. And I'm like, I get it now. I'm a theologian.
Yeah,
not really.
Theologians, and even when you look into the core origins of a lot of the major religions, it makes you scratch your head and wonder, like, if they were actually encounters with the phenomenon that were picked up and trying to reinitiate contact, evolved into all these different religious rituals and rites and trying to receive the message and stuff like that. We don't have to get into a bunch of religion, but the point I wanted to bring up with what we've been talking about is the idea of altered states of consciousness. It seems like in these encounters, there's always like an out-of-body experience or some sort of a telepathic communication. Even with the Nimitz encounter, there's people on the crew that claimed that they, had severe nightmares and like telepathic paranormal stuff that bothered them. And it seems to happen all the time like this. So what is it about our ability to be consciously aware, like slipping into dream states or meditative states, that seems to trigger this or affect contact? What do you think, Michael?
So many good questions there. Let's go back here. Let me kind of preface it with this. So Lou talked about this, idea. We always talk about ourselves living in 3 dimensions, yet we actually live in 4 because time is a dimension. What we experience when it comes to gravity and kind of being stuck to this planet, time behaves very differently than if you're traveling at the speed of light, right? So there is this, there's this way of looking at the world that is very materialistic and very mechanistic in the here and now, and we're only looking at Newtonian physics and how things react, but that doesn't, all that begins to break down on the quantum realm, and all that begins to break down when you reach the speed of light. So if any being has come close to manipulating the speed of light, now they're in charge of that 4th dimension, and now they can move through that 4th dimension. And that gives them a much greater ability to see reality as it is than we have. So if we are being visited by beings like that, then we can expect not to ever be able to truly understand them coming from, our 3-dimensional experience that we vaguely can understand the relationship between time and matter. That being said, I want to go back to your question about consciousness and the relationship there. When we were talking to Dr. Massimo Teodorini from Italy, who had been studying the Hesdalen lights, one of the things that he mentioned was they had a 2-hour experience with this object that they couldn't explain. And
that was in Norway, right?
That's in Norway, correct.
I think J. Allen Hynek went and studied there for a long time. But yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so the interesting thing, though, was that I believe Teodrani and then one of the other scientists, they had opposite conscious reactions to this experience. One felt like they were being driven away and they were terrified, and they couldn't help but feel like their mind was being, I hesitate to use a word like rape, but he felt like something was entering his consciousness that was not invited. And so the other scientists, I believe it was Teodrani, but we'll have to double check this next time we speak to him, was attracted, that he felt pulled consciously toward the object. And this reminded me of psychedelics and how some people in a psychedelic experience can have a profound experience where they feel like they're being pulled toward a greater consciousness, whereas other people can feel like they're being repelled and they're trying to escape what they believe is a breach in their own consciousness. So this phenomenon is interesting the way it relates in a sort of conscious way. Now, are the Tic Tacs conscious? Can we connect with them? Are these other objects conscious? Maybe. But I think it's fascinating, the relationship between people's conscious experiences in psychedelic states and then experiences when they're dealing with these unknown phenomena. It's fascinating to me.
It makes you wonder, us as humans, there isn't any other life on the entire planet that actually builds a craft to crawl inside and then travels around. Usually life evolves in such a way that it self-contains itself in order to fly or swim through the water or do what it does. And it makes you wonder, like, that conscious connection. Are these craft actually conscious in and of itself? Or are there little beings running around inside, or both? The whole thing is super fascinating to me. But I think I like what you said, Michael. Like, people who have experimented with psychedelics seem to also understand this concept of other dimensions of reality being possible. You can take mushrooms or psilocybin, something like that, in a controlled environment, in a good setting, and experience an altered state of consciousness and sit right in your bedroom or backyard and see reality from a different lens, a different focal point, and realize maybe how it's not the same as you think it is, or held together energetically the way that you normally experience it. And I think that gives a lot of people a clue that there could be other things there. There could be entities living in those blind spots and those shadows. So what do you think it's going to take? Is it going to be like an approach through the consciousness exploration, through like remote viewing and psychedelics, and that's going to open the gateway to be able to explore the phenomenon? Or is it going to be through advancements in technology and integrating ourselves with technology in order to see these things and enhancing ourselves? How are we going to finally make real legitimate contact?
I think it's both.
Yeah, we keep saying that.
It really is, though.
But I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, well, I hate in this topic. I hate to always say it's just one thing, because it just doesn't make sense for it to be one thing. I think it could be a combination of all these things we're talking about. It could be that crazy. My biggest fear is that when we do make contact, my biggest fear is they're just as messed up and divided as us. That would be my biggest fear.
Yeah. Like a whole string of them, like maybe Roswell is just like some scout ship that crashed, some other incidents totally different. It could be completely different, unconnected, disconnected incidents. And we think that aliens are all just one thing, but it's kind of crazy to think that when you go look in the ocean, you think, oh, there's only tuna. That's not the case. When you look into other dimensions of reality, the variety would be endless, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you think about, like the scale of civilizations, like type 1, type 2, the Kardashev scale. And then you think about, the reverse of that, right? The mastery of the quantum realm. And so we don't know what we're dealing with here. Maybe we're dealing with both, right? If you're thinking about extraterrestrial civilizations and they have been able to reach the, build Dyson spheres and reach these extraordinary
create
levels.
Their own stars.
Yeah, these extraordinary levels of technology. Those might be those might be the ones that are sending out von Neumann probes and exploring the galaxy with AI. Whereas you have these other, other civilizations that have gone in and mastered the subatomic realm and the ability to, literally create anything that they want. And so, and understand, dimensional reality, light speed, all these sorts of things. So, you may have different variations of extraterrestrials throughout the universe, some who have mastered the outer world and some who have mastered the inner world. And so you'd definitely be dealing with very different species, depending on how they evolve.
Yeah, it seems like there's always kind of a consistent thread to it, like that consciousness connection. And you can't escape it in the end. Ultimately, you have to perceive the encounter through the lens of your witness. You have to look up at the sky and see it and process it and think about it and have the emotions, or you're experiencing it like in a dream state or coming to you in a meditative state, or some sort of out of body experience like that. So I think this is such a fascinating thing, and we're kind of realizing that maybe it's not so much of a problem that everybody's coming at it from the wrong angle, but the variety of the phenomenon is so vast, because you've got everything from nuts and bolts crafts coming from other planets potentially, or probes or drones being sent to check us out, to other dimensional type entities and beings, and maybe a blend of both, like Skinwalker Ranch. You've got kind of both going on. So what is, we could talk about
not
Skinwalker
to mention
Ranch.
Terrestrial, not to mention like what here and now. We just had an extraordinary conversation with David Hambling, who wrote Small Drones Will Take Over the World. And so we're seeing, and this is going to be a big problem for people who are studying UAPs and UFOs and are looking for the types of UAPs and UFOs that you're talking about, the interdimensional, extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, those sorts of UFOs. But on the other side, you've also got drone technology that is just exploding. So it's like, and I think this is the biggest danger that we face when it comes to getting to the bottom of some of these truths, is that people will easily attempt to debunk any of the types of UFOs and UAPs you're talking about by simply referencing drones as drones get more advanced and are sighted more. And so you have so many sightings that are terrestrial already that can easily be attributed to things that our current technology is capable of. And I think, the concern I have is that we'll lose sight of these diamonds in the rough and not explore and look for the things that we should be looking for, that are potentially extraterrestrial or interdimensional, because 99% of it is terrestrial.
That's true. That's a good point.
Well, I'm also wondering too, Carl, because you asked, like, well, how do you think we're going to make contact? Is it going to be like a remote view? Is it going to be some sort of technique that we've figured out and how to flag them down? What if we already have? And I'm not saying like, hi, I'm Carl Vibe. Hello, I'm Zentar from Zeta Reticuli. Not like that. I mean, like, and we've had the discussion again. Like, what if these nuclear weapons, these 6,000 plus nuclear bomb detonations that have gone off have been contact for them? What if those bombs, those ripping of atoms and what that does to space time? What are we affecting on the other side of that? Because I always think of, can you imagine if we blew up a coffee shop or something in another dimension, or we wiped out an entire country somewhere, country-like thing, I don't say country, but just something on the other side that could cause great pain and loss of life.
Yeah, you detonate these bombs under the ocean, and like before you knew that there was like whales and dolphins and life under there,
right?
Just like, let's just throw our trash out there in the ocean and it'll take care of it.
But don't you guys think
we don't really know? Yeah.
Don't you guys think that an atomic bomb detonation on a tiny planet like Earth is nothing compared to a supernova? Like that's why I have a hard time believing that idea, because it's like, Well, what would a supernova do to rip the time space continuum and create a black
maybe
hole?
the
versus
signature of a supernova though is different than the splitting of an atom. You know what I mean? Maybe they register differently.
It's hard to split out the hairs on it because at the same time as the nuclear weapon advancement happening all over the world, we've got the space race going on and probes and satellites being sent out, advancements in satellite and radio technology. So we're sending all of a sudden as a planet all sorts of crazy signals out into the cosmos and completely changing technologically, and all of a sudden electricity and all sorts of information systems wrapping around the globe. So, I mean, if there's anything out there to listening, we all of a sudden turned on in a big way back in the middle of World War II in that turn of the century. And so whether it was the atomic explosions got their attention, and maybe again, it was a variety. Certain ones were attracted to different events.
And there's absolutely a correlation between UFO sightings and the first atomic detonation. So I definitely see that correlation. I just have a hard time with the idea that our nuclear bombs are so destructive interdimensionally that I have a hard time wrapping my head around. But it's
well, I mean, again, imagine these things are we don't see them because we don't have the filter, right? But they're right in front of our face, and
that's an interesting point.
This is life, right? And you don't know where this life thrives. You don't know what it lives off of, and you've just put a nuclear weapon in their space, man. And maybe they're aware of us, and they're looking at us, going, "Okay, what the fuck do we do about this?"
Like they drop a big bomb out in some desert valley in Nevada, and unbeknownst to us, we're blind to the fact that in another dimension that sends a total shockwave through an entire sort of civilization of beings that lives on this other side of reality that we can't even perceive, and they become aware of that, and that clues them in to try to figure out their problems from their side of the problem.
Wouldn't it be scarier if they couldn't do anything about it?
Scary for them.
If they're if we're dependent upon each other in some kind of symbiotic way that we don't understand in nature, it's very interesting.
It's fun to think about. Probably very unlikely, but it's fun to think. I mean, like I like to think of
can't take anything off the table, man.
The Kardashev scale, right? The type 5 civilization. I think even Michikaku might have added a 6th, but this idea of creating your own star, that's insane to me. And I wonder what kind of listening probes, like a Project Mogul, they have littered through galaxies all over the place. And they can tell the difference between a supernova and intelligent life playing God.
Right.
I don't know. It's fun to
think about. It's this idea that what's the quote? Magic is indistinguishable from advanced technology. And that's I think what we have to be thinking about when it comes to the Kardashev scale and potential extraterrestrial intelligences, right? I mean, what we would perceive as magic or just extraordinary is simple technology that they've developed and mastered.
So here's a question from Kev D. He said, if you had a free pass for, let's say, 24 hours, high-level security clearance to be able to see any kind of secret place or thing, and you wouldn't get in trouble for talking about it, where would you go? What would you look at? Would it be like Lockheed Martin, or would it be underground Area 51? Would it be...
Man, that's a good question, because lately I think I'd lean toward the Department of Energy, but I wouldn't know where to look.
Exactly.
Whereas Area 51, I'd be like, how many hours do I have? 24?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be able to get the whole basin in 24 hours.
Let's just say they drop you off in like Disneyland. It's like, here you go.
I mean, look, if it was a drop off in a place where I had a feeling where all the information would be, and it was just, okay, there's the door, you could go through it, you don't have to look for it, and you get 24 hours to just kind of have fun and explore.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go Department of Energy.
So would that be like Department of Energy, like in Area 51 itself? Like go to right at the...
Wherever they accumulate all of their files on all of the toys and all of the nuclear patents and all their patent office. That's where I'd want to go to. Is their patent office and see what kind of toys they've developed and actually put into Vatican Library.
Vatican Library. That's a good one.
Fucking great.
The mysteries in the Vatican
Can I take
Library.
mine back? Can I go to the Vatican Library? Because that's good. I mean, or if it was any place in time, I'd go to oh god, it just left the tip of my brain. The Library of Alexandria.
That'd be dope.
That'd be the one. That would be cool. But if it was today, I'd say the patent office or the patent file of all of the military toys at the DOE.
That'd be amazing. What about you, Michael? Where would you go? Run around in some warehouse where they keep the Ark of the Covenant or something? Or
I mean, Bell Labs is interesting to me, and this is probably on the same line as Lou with the DOE, but like Bell Labs or Lockheed Martin would be interesting. Like their super secret developmental areas. I'd also be curious. I'd definitely be curious about Area 51. That's
Kevin Childress is in the chat. I'd wonder where Kevin Childress would go for 24.
Yeah, Kevin, where would you go?
Is S4 a real thing? Like, I don't know. I was thinking S4. Somebody said S4 in the thing, but I'm just not sure if S4 is an actual facility.
You go to try to go to Dulce, New Mexico. Dulce, New Mexico, and there's nothing there. It's all a rumor.
No base. It's just BS. Yeah, like I would want to know that has been 100% confirmed and verified.
That would be amazing. So, like, it would be
then
interesting.
He said the second part of the question was you couldn't tell anybody.
Oh, he said you couldn't tell anybody.
You couldn't.
Yeah. Or would you turn down the? Yeah.
I would Bob Lazar. I would tell everybody.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've always said that the topic needs a Nelson Mandela. It needs a very credible person that people respect and actually love that comes out and tells this truth and then gets punished for it. So they're made a martyr. The topic needs a martyr. It needs like an Edward Snowden or something, someone in that vein who's just like, you know what, this is BS, and literally steals the information. Like steals the information from wherever it comes from, blast it out publicly. It's the wrong way to do it. It's 100% against security ethics and codes. But I think that's what the topic needs. It really does. That's somebody that is completely unapologetic about giving people the truth on the topic with proof, not just a story, with actual hardcore pieces or a smoking gun document video. It would have to be, something extraordinary. Kevin Childress, I can't go there.
He's like, I can't go.
What do you guys think? Like, what?
Wait, real quick, Kevin. Was I close with the patent office though? Can you tell me if I was close?
Off the record, maybe.
Right. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
You wouldn't know what you're looking at. He says that's fair. No, I was just gonna say, like,
totally fair.
What if the government has like proof that we are being visited, but like they're not in contact? Like, what would disclosure mean in that circumstance? Would it even be valuable? Would it even matter?
I think it'd be definitely valuable.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if they did card out on a flatbed truck in front of some news station and say, we're going to do an actual release, this is a real craft. I mean, there would be a huge amount of the population that still wouldn't care or wouldn't believe it. I think you're right. It would be a multifaceted approach. It would take not only the scientific community backing it, but the government, multiple governments. It's going to have to be like a global sort of disclosure, because in the end, if it is some sort of a physical craft that came down, but it's also connected to other dimensions of reality, how they proceed to disclose this or how it comes out is going to be very interesting. Because if they are right in front of our faces or in this alternate dimension of reality, and sometimes they pop through in physical form and then crash, then it is two parts of a problem. We've got not only these things coming down and invading our space and our oceans and things like that with advanced technology, but they're potentially, the boogeyman under the bed and in the closet at night, and they have been there the whole time. So what is the thread that you guys think ties this together, from boogeyman under the bed, the shadow man in the corner, poltergeist, all the way up to craft in the sky?
What's your question exactly?
My throat's kind of going out again.
Oh,
my
sorry.
question is, in the spectrum there, because it's such a big scale, how do we need to approach disclosure? Where do we cut that down? Where do you think people are going to actually accept it the easiest? Is it going to be a craft, or is it exploring consciousness in that way?
Well, I guess that's the point of my question. Like, what if we're not in contact and we don't have any? It's like we're not going to get like unlimited energy. We're not going to get like cool technology out of it, but we just like know it exists. I don't know that anything changes, bro. Like, I don't know if disclosure actually changes anything, because like you said, people are still not going to believe it. You're still going to have, it's not like anything we're not in a post-scarcity society. Like, that's to me the biggest, if we are being visited and there is advanced technology and they're willing to offer it to us to get us past this point of, just polluting the planet and get us to another level of civilization, then that's one thing. But if it's not that, and we either found a craft or we're just aware of something existing, I don't know that much changes.
I think I disagree a little bit. I mean, if it's something along the lines of, the president of the United States or heads of state around the world come out together in a press conference and announce to the world that there is an extraterrestrial presence, it's visiting our planet, but we're not in contact with it.
Right.
I think that changes science tomorrow. The discussion changes tomorrow. I think they immediately go into hike. I think you think NASA's switching into a gear now with Bill Nelson and his crazy smile. Imagine if something like that happened. I think a lot of funds would be devoted from probes, with helicopters on Mars that, they're cool and they're the first step. But shit, man, we could be doing a lot of cool stuff here, and probing for stuff here and looking for stuff here, especially in our oceans. Forget about, an announcement like that. But if an announcement did happen, man, I think that would be a paradigm shift for sure, dude. I don't think I agree with you on some levels that for some people it'll be just like water off a duck's back. Cool, man. I kind of knew that anyway. Right? No big deal. But I think for the people in scientific academia, that's going to be a huge gut punch to Mick West, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I mean, what did they say the next day the president of the United States makes an announcement like that and say they have a concrete 2-angle look with radar forget the radar. Let's just say cockpit recordings and the two pilots that were actually there with the event, and they're there with the president and they tell their experience, something along those lines. Dude, I think that changes a lot of stuff. But if it doesn't come with the free energy, it doesn't come with, the I always think of Star Trek, just spaceships coming up and down, going here and there. We're not the Jetsons, but I think that announcement, if we don't get the other version of disclosure at some point, that announcement in 200, 300, 400 years down the line, I think makes science way different than it would be if we don't get that announcement.
That's a really good point. So this idea, it's almost like when you're sailing a ship, you change it 1 degree and you're moving your trajectory by thousands of miles. So I can accept that. I don't think anything changes overnight.
No. I think it's going to be our channel changes overnight. You know what I'm saying?
We're on NBC overnight.
Dude, like our channel goes from tiny little thing to, oh my God, people are going to be super curious about this. So I think for folks like us, it's gonna be the day we've been waiting for, because now everybody wants to have the discussion, and now we're in charge of catching everybody up. So
Yeah.
that's gonna be fun.
That's cool.
And I think the water cooler conversation is gonna be lit. I think Sunday service. I'd say I haven't been to church in a while, but I would go to church that Sunday and listen to what the priest has to say that Sunday service. Dude, there are going to be some really, really fun discussions and opinions. And like, we're going to get to hear what the Kardashians think about this. You know, we're going to who knows dude.
Well, and think about the cults that start to pop up.
The cults that pop up, that's just I don't want to think about the ugly shit. But
I'm just saying, you got to know
that'll happen. No, for sure, that would happen without a doubt. But imagine the marketing campaign Tic Tac puts on then, or Oreo or Prada, or a NASCAR or the NFL, like that. Like everybody's gonna jump on this. Oh man, we're not alone wagon. And it's going to be like the hottest thing for the next 50 years. And then I think that inspires, like you said, it's just like the 1 degree on the ship. Like a kid who's 6 years old and hears that announcement when he's 30, what kind of trajectory changes that for that kind of person? Do they get into science? Do they try to think of energies that fit these whatever we are privy to, whatever we get, but that inspires people to think of those technologies and those and think like a fringe thinker,
And people might return even to like ancient spiritual practices again. We've talked about this on the show before, where suddenly everybody kind of becomes sort of a pseudo modern version of Hindu or Buddhist, and that connection sort of turns full circle back through time, and we realize the connection in our ancient history, that this has been going on for forever in our past. These other entities, whether they come from other dimensions or other planets, have been coming potentially and interacting us forever. So people could have a huge shift in that. So, I mean, it's one thing if everybody just had to accept like a piece of evidence, but imagine if they were able to suddenly like shift the 5G signal and change our perspectives, and suddenly you see the poltergeist that's living in your house alongside you, and you understand the entity, and you become visibly aware of it or emotionally aware of it. Would that suddenly create a shift where we realize we're not alone? These things are right in front of our face, cohabitating the universe with us.
Well, yeah, I've actually, during a psilocybin experience, that was a very vivid thought or vivid experience, was this idea that there is literally this switch, and like when you switch it, humanity, the quantumly entangled brains that we all have, are able to see in a higher frequency. But it wasn't this idea of like you can now see the poltergeist. Like everything just moved up a level of frequency, where it was now like what we associated with evil or darkness was just immediately replaced with much more vivid and bright, things. So yeah, this is something that I've definitely thought about, ruminated on, and it's something that I'm fascinated by. So I think if there's an evolution of the human species that is not a technological singularity, but is some sort of raising of the vibrational awareness, then I've thought about that for a long time.
Yeah, it's interesting that we keep talking about the psychedelics, but suddenly you maybe even perceive what you normally experience day to day, like the table in front of you, energetically, perceptually completely different. And you understand the concept of reality in a different way than you've understood it before, not just the user interface that's straightforward that you've experienced from birth all the way up, right. But you sort of change your goggles, put a different lens on, and perceive things differently. And you realize there's other things that may exist there right alongside us in a co-reality in the shadows, sort of that we've evolved to not be able to even perceive them. And you would never know unless you change that lens, change your perspective, and change your focus. And so one last thing that ties into that is that you have like the Stanford Research Institute. They do remote viewing. They seem to approach all of this from not only the technology, but also the consciousness perspective. So you've got remote viewing teams. I just interviewed Paul Smith on my last show. He even himself said they had a whole team of people that remote viewed the backside of the moon. And they encountered a craft that was like a Tic Tac on the dark side of the moon, sitting in a crater that seemed to be consciously aware. Not only that, but consciously of them remote viewing them somehow, even from Earth. And this is a whole team of remote viewers that, for all they know, they might be looking for a box of buried pirate treasure in the Caribbean. They have no idea going into it that they are being sent to look at the moon. And so you've got people approaching it from the consciousness meditative perspective, and then you've got, you know, fighter jets and technology and satellites looking at it as well. And somewhere in the middle, people are going to have to face the truth of this reality and how it's going to come out. So if you had your pick, Michael, of how disclosure came out, would it come out from the people, from the extraterrestrials, or would it come out through the government? Or what do you think would be like your ideal way?
It's this consciousness shift, right? It's this extraordinary connection with whatever we're actually dealing with, right? Whether it's spiritual in nature or quantum in nature, however you want to define that. But if there was this sort of frequency shift that we could experience as human beings that put us into this new reality where we now have new goggles and we can see in a new way, I think that's the only thing to me that gets everybody on board at the same time. Now, if it's technological, it's a post-scarcity civilization. It's the ability to move past resource, ownership and move into this sort of egalitarian society that is beyond need for these sorts of competitions over resources. So from a technological side, I think it's a technology that creates post-scarcity. And then from a, potential consciousness side, I think it's this raising of the vibration that allows us to change our goggles and see the world in a new way.
So overall, from not only civilization and the technology advancing and benefiting humanity, but also spiritually and esoterically, people changing their perspectives and having to evolve into that new world. That's really
great. I mean, think about it, because then you're not dealing with like communication issues and errors in perception. It's just you're just all on the same wavelength like this.
Yeah.
Because if we truly are a unified field and all of our brains are these quantum computers, then they should be able to be connected. And I know that sounds scary to people because it's like, well, I need my privacy. But if you're thinking, if it's like a quantum shift, it's a paradigm shift. You don't realize what the advantages and the bonuses are because you're not experiencing it. You're used to living in that fear of losing your identity, yourself, your stuff.
What about you, Lou? Do you think are you excited more about the technology aspect of it or the spiritual evolution of it that might come, or both?
I mean, both, obviously.
Going with the theme of today.
But if I had to choose one, man, that's tough, because I've had this spiritual connection. I don't want to say spiritual, but we've talked about my download that I had a few months ago, and man, that was awesome.
Yeah.
It feels great, right? Like the clarity, awesome. Associated with something like that.
So clear. How I could see things. It was so cool. But then again, I really want to go to space.
Yeah.
Like how cool would it be to see the rings of Saturn, or or see the sun, like, and get a perspective of how big it really is, God, I don't know, man. That's a tough question. Yeah. I think I would like to see the phenomena just present itself. So like kind of what Michael said, everybody's just on the same page. There's no more questions or lies or obfuscation. It's these are the facts. I'm almost wondering if you can have one without the other, but if I had to pick one, I think I'm gonna go spiritual.
Yeah.
Just because I've had the chance to now experience both. And maybe because the download was a lot more recent and really, really visceral for me and emotional for me. And it was awesome. I've never felt anything like that in my life. But
And you described
yeah.
it like a download. I've experienced
Yeah.
that as well. Like when I've been meditating, I have like what I call a waiting room that I've visualized in my meditative space, so that when I get to a certain state of consciousness, I sort of enter a waiting room that I imagine in my mind. And if somebody has some other entity or something wants to come and deliver a message to me, then they will. And I've had some pretty phenomenal experiences with that. And I don't know if it's just tapping into your own subconscious and being able to suddenly like enhance your own mind's ability to understand reality. And it feels like a giant download, but that's exactly how I would perceive it. And sometimes it's accompanied with feeling like there's a being there, or someone, or even an ancestral type of presence. And then suddenly it's like I have a giant epiphany. I had that exact experience standing at the viewing at my father's funeral, standing there alone in the room with his body. I decided I was going to meditate, had a massive download of understanding the nature of reality as everything being reflections of motion and light and energy. And it was like a whole physics lesson just put into my mind and into my soul. Like I understood it all within a moment and didn't have to really even process it. It was like Neo in the Matrix. Like I know Kung Fu. It's like, oh, I understand like the movement of space time and reality differently now. Just standing in there meditating with my father, you know. And so same thing, but I've also seen strange stuff in the sky and had like a paranormal encounter camping in the woods, you know. So I think for myself, I like the idea of both, in the sense that I would love a big giant ship to come down, undeniable, right over like New York City or somewhere big, and everybody just be blown away, undeniable. You can't avoid it. And then what comes out of that is a giant spiritual shift in reality in that contact. And we have to evolve and in order to communicate and learn and get along with that type of connection and experience, forces us to
Carl.
suddenly evolve and maybe not only transform our technology to match with that, but suddenly not be in disarray and have that be two different worlds, but our technology and spiritual world suddenly unite, which is the type of singularity I'm hoping for too.
Same, brother.
Yeah, right. So with that, you know, we've talked here a little bit over an hour. I want to give you guys an opportunity really quick to tell everybody again what you guys have coming up on your own shows. I mean, we could go on for hours and hours. I'm having weird throat twitches and stuff like that going on. So, Michael, why don't you tell everybody first what you got going on? Who's coming up on the Singularity Lab over there?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't followed the Singularity Lab, make sure you go check us out over there. You can just type in the Singularity Lab on YouTube, or you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. So this week on Thursday. So again, if you guys didn't know, we go live 5 nights a week, 3 times: Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Unidentified Celebrity Review, Tuesday, Thursday on the Singularity Lab. This week, who the heck do I have coming up this week? Oh, I've got a genomics expert coming on Tuesday. So we're going to be talking about gene editing and the future of gene editing, future people, as it were, and whether we're going to be engineering a superhuman race. So that's on Tuesday, and then on Thursday, I'll have to remember and get back to you on that one. But yeah, it should be a good time. And then we're also doing the Big Phone Home 2 coming up on Labor Day weekend, which is going to be dope.
It's going to be awesome. If you guys checking this out on YouTube, I've got everybody's links down in the description below if you want to click those and check them out. Lou, tell everybody what you've got coming up. We got the Big Phone Home coming up. I didn't mean to jump this on you guys, who your guests are and all that, but tell everybody what you've got going on.
So this week we've got, on Monday, we got Science Bob McGuire, which is going to be really fun. He's part of the SCU. We've got Ross Coldhart, who just wrote the book In Plain Sight, and he's confirmed for the Big Phone Home. So he's also going to be joining us there as well. And then we've got Dave Beatty coming on Friday. to discuss his film, The Nimitz Encounter, and now how it's kind of obsolete, and his announcement on Twitter, which I thought was just honestly one of the best things I've ever seen on Twitter, is somebody being open and honest and calling it how it is, and saying, hey, this project I put all this time into, it's not valid anymore, sorry, which sucks for him as an artist, and I'm sure as a researcher. And
which, can we just take a second and appreciate that there's been so much coming out recently with all of this, as much as it feels like we're starving for more breakthroughs and more drops of information, that he can't even get a film produced without it becoming obsolete by the time it's done. That means things are moving pretty quick. We just don't, we're impatient.
That's a good point.
They are, man. No, it's a good point. And then, as far as guests for the big phone home, we're still finalizing a lot of these folks. I can tell you for sure, Lou Elizondo will be there 100%. John Greenwald will be there 100%. Avi Loeb will be there 100%. Again, Ross Coulthart will be there 100%. We got members from the Galileo Project. We've got Rich Hoffman from the SCU. We've got so many folks. Vinny Adams from Disclosure Team.
Paul Davies.
Danny Silva will be joining us. Looks like Project Unity will be joining us. Alex Sears. We've got UFO Jane, who's going to be leading an all-female UFO UAP discussion, where me and Michael won't even be on the show. So that'll be really, really cool. Stephen Greenstreet, I think he's on the fence. I'm not sure if he's going to go. He's a journalist. So some journalists are very funny about political movements. They don't want to be associated with them because that gives them some sort of bias, but some journalists don't care. And that's great, because if we can get some journalists to tell their readers and followers, hey, this is a worthy effort, I think you should look into it, or at least just tell a story about it. I think that's a great thing. Jason McClellan will be there. I'm going to be reaching out to, some of the folks that came from last year. I just haven't had a chance yet to reach out to everybody. We're going to try and get Richard Dolan. We're going to, just a multitude. I'm waiting to hear on 4 massive guests. That's all I can give you. Massive. Like, if we get these 4 guests, sky's the limit, I think, on who we can attract to come talk to us. We're trying to get senators, congressmen to join us for conversations if we can, especially on the last day, which is a veteran theme day. It's going to be veterans, former government officials, and hopefully state and local officials as well, and maybe some scientists sprinkled in there, and some big time opinion makers. So that's all I could say. But it's shaping up to be a really, really fun 3 days. So
that is going to be a huge show. Everybody go check out, if you don't know already, the Unidentified Celebrity Review with Luis Jimenez, and make sure and subscribe and turn on notifications there so you don't miss the big phone home. I think it is going to be the event horizon that pushes disclosure over the edge. And I hope that those guests line up when they see that everybody else. And also, Michael, over there on the Singularity Lab, I want to wish you the best of luck. Thanks, you guys, so much for joining the show today. And over in the chat, everybody that had your questions and comments, to keep it going. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Carl.
Later.
Thank you.